this doesn't really matter and that the Bills just will beat the Chiefs in the regular season. And until they do it in the playoffs, I don't care. I just don't care.
All right, everybody, welcome back. And as always, I am your party host, Joe Rivera. And along with me, as always, is one of the preeminent ball knowers at USA Today Sports, and that's Chris Boombaka. Boom. Football gods gave us a pretty benign week 8, but week 9 was full of thrilling comebacks, just lots and lots of fun stuff at home. Panthers beat the Packers. I mean, who saw that coming? Bryce Young looks bad, and then he looks good again. Bizarre. The Vikings beat the Lions. The Jets lose to the bye week, so who expects that? Colts fall to the Steelers. But what's your biggest takeaway from Week 9, Boom?
Yeah, shout out my Panthers, hanging tough. The Packers are like, and they've always done this under Matt LaFleur, but they are played to the level of your competition core. Like that is just their MO. That's how they roll. But yeah, I think one of the big takeaways for me this week, Joe, again, like you said, some awesome finishes, close games. That Bears Bengals game was insane. Colson Loveland's 58-yard touchdown with like 17 seconds left. The Bengals defense, yikes, man. Holy smokes. But run the ball, like ball control. This matters in this league. Look at what happened in the case of the Colts on Sunday, excuse me. They completely had no handle on that game against the Steelers defense that we've come on here and maligned every single week. And it's because they couldn't get anything going on the ground. It fell into Daniel Jones's hands, and it didn't go well for them. I look at a team like the New England Patriots, who are missing Ramondre Stevenson, but they were still able to get some juice out of Travion Henderson and were able to control the game and the clock in that way. And they escape with a 1-point victory. Like the Bills, we're going to talk about it more later, but they controlled the pace of that game. They controlled the ball. Like that matters. Running the ball matters. The Vikings upset the Lions, all because of their run defense and the way that they ran it. Running the ball, man, it matters.
I guess running backs do matter. I mean, running backs matter. There's a whole separate discussion, Boom. But to your point, I think you've seen it in recent years, right? Like the re-emphasis on running backs and running game. Like Patrick Mahomes shows up and he's drafted and he explodes for the 50 touchdowns, and everybody's like, oh, well, the future of the NFL is in the passing game. And then Dan Campbell shows up in Detroit, and suddenly you have Sonic and Knuckles and David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, and everybody wants to run the ball now, right? Like it's a copycat league. And Saquon, we know all about it. So to your point, running the ball still matters. It very much does, especially if you want to get wins, especially when it gets colder in January. So shout out to the running backs who do ultimately matter.
Totally, yeah. And I think it goes beyond just the backs themselves. Like this is an O-line thing. This is a philosophy thing. This is a coaching thing. That's what I'm talking about. And that's what I saw in week 9.
Absolutely. All right, Boom. We're going to discuss some of these performances in a segment I want to call Forward Pass here. We're going to get into a few matchups and the overarching themes, what these matchups mean moving forward the rest of the season, right? I want to start with Sunday Night Football. The Commanders get absolutely blown out, depantsed, ruined on Sunday Night Football. But the biggest headline here, obviously, is Jayden Daniels still in that game late, ends up with an absolutely brutal looking arm injury. His third separate injury this year. I mean, his durability has come into question a little bit, but for a season that, maybe started with some Super Bowl aspirations, the expectations were pretty high, especially coming off of their playoff run last year. What's your takeaway from the Commanders from this season?
Look, I know one show that was not as high on the Commanders as the rest of the national media. It might be these two guys sitting right here. Look, the Jayden injury is terrible. You never want to see something as horrible looking as that. And as you mentioned, Joe, his third injury of the year already. We're not even halfway through the season. Uh, Dan Quinn's going to take a lot of flack for leaving his quarterback in there in a 38-7 game. And we need to kind of talk about that for a second, because the only reason Jayden Daniels was in that game was because Dan Quinn's defense got beat up so badly to the tune that they were down 38-7. His team could not tackle. They could not cover. They couldn't stop the run. And that's why Jayden Daniels was still in that game, because Dan Quinn's defense was getting embarrassed again this week. That defense is a complete joke. And they played like it all year long. And that's why their quarterback got hurt, because their coach was too prideful to take him out. And look, I've spent time around Jayden Daniels, that locker room. His compete level, as Dan Quinn would call it, actually, is off the charts. You probably have a really hard time bringing Jayden Daniels out of that game. But the broadcast showed him with a towel over his head on the bench before that series. Like, that it doesn't take a rocket scientist or guys crunching spreadsheets upstairs your analytics department to say, "Hey, let's do this. This is a common sense thing." And I find Dan Quinn to be a high EQ coach, so that was like really disappointing for me to watch as somebody who has been around this team. But yeah, it's just a really bad scene there, and a complete lost season from them. They are the like the infamous line of "season from hell." Like, that's the Commanders this year.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you, Boom. There's so many layers to try and unwrap here. Number one, an NFL head coach, like there's nothing wrong with the surrender benching, in my opinion. Like you got to protect the franchise, especially when you have a guy like Jayden Daniels, he's your future, right? And
He's
this
been
is
hurt
now,
twice.
yeah, twice already, man. Like, and it's not even the same injury. Like it's two separate injuries, so it's like three separate injuries now, which is brutal. So like you have to read the room, and being an NFL head coach means you have to protect these guys from themselves a lot of the time too. Like every one of these guys are going to want to play hurt if they can, right? There's a difference between playing hurt and playing injured. Not to say obviously that Jayden Daniels was hurt at that moment, but you have to say, listen, man, you got to lose the battle to win the war sometimes, and it is just is what it is. Like that's when you have to make the decision to sit him down and say, all right. So it's funny because I was watching the Giants game earlier in the day, and I said to myself, why is Jackson Dart still in this game with 5 minutes left versus the 49ers? Like, and we know their defense is pretty good. Like, he just shouldn't be out there at this point. Again,
Talk
there's
about
nothing
another coach with no regard for his young quarterback.
right.
Holy
Oh yeah.
smokes.
Yeah, and at the end of the game, cameras caught Dart on the sideline. It looked like his arm was maybe his left arm. Thankfully, his non-throwing arm was maybe a little bit jacked up, and he was taking a squat on the sideline, just looking not 100%. So, listen, man, as like I said, as an NFL head coach, you just got to read the room sometimes. You just have to. I understand that there's no quitting these guys, and you never want to be the coach who benches his quarterback because you're essentially waving the white flag at that point. But everybody knows what's going on, especially when you get whooped that bad on a national audience. All right, Boom. So we had it was a relatively non-competitive game on Sunday Night Football, but a relatively competitive game in the afternoon slot between the Bills and the Chiefs. And listen, we heard it on the broadcast. We've seen this over the last X amount of years now. Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, the Bills or Chiefs is the preeminent rivalry in the NFL right now, I think is fair to say, right?
Definitely.
What's your biggest takeaway from the game yesterday? Because I have a take that's maybe a little bit lukewarm, but I'm curious your thoughts first.
Is your take that this doesn't really matter and that the Bills just will beat the Chiefs in the regular season, and until they do it in the playoffs, I don't care. I just don't care. I don't.
Absolutely.
Look, the Bills definitely showed the blue. Not that the blueprint isn't out there. The Chiefs have 4 losses on the season, but like, that's how the Bills can get it done in January if they want to. They're going to have to control the clock, though. By staying in the lead, or at least close to it, you don't let the Chiefs pass rush kind of come in there. You don't let Steve Spagnuolo dial up some of those things that could really lead to turnovers or massive losses or sacks, things like that. So I think that's kind of going to have to be the Bills' MO, not only against the Chiefs, but for them, period, because I'm still not high on that defense, even though they played all right yesterday. Chiefs sometimes really, bug me because they'll look awesome in the passing attack one week and then the next, like, it'll look completely lost. So I don't know what's going on there. Like, the inconsistency is a little bit alarming for me, but again, I'm not going to read too much into it at this point in the season because maybe we've seen this movie before.
Right. I mean, that's exactly a Boom. Like, and this might sound salty coming from a Jets fan, and we know this, but Bills fans, hang the banner for the 5 straight wins against the Chiefs in the regular season. Like, because that's what it feels like right now, right? Like, this doesn't matter. This game does not matter. We heard it on the broadcast yesterday. The Bills are designed to beat the Chiefs. Like, they are singularly focused on building a team that can stop Patrick Mahomes. You heard Tony Romo say it. Like, everybody knows it. It's not a secret, right? I understand they're not, they're in a dogfight for the division right now, but this is all about January. This is about the playoffs, the AC Championship game. The Bills Chiefs game yesterday does not matter. It simply does not, unless it gets to a point where, okay, you're talking about home field advantage in the playoffs and how much that could matter. I get it. And having the tiebreakers, I understand that part of it. But Like if you're trying to prove something by saying, "Oh, well, the Bills beat the Chiefs in the regular season, that means they can beat them in January." It hasn't happened. It simply has not happened. So listen, again, yes, take the win. You obviously take the win. You beat Patrick Mahomes. They're still the boogeyman, right? At the end of the day, they're the light at the end of the tunnel. They're the C train coming down the tracks, right? So it doesn't matter. Like it's as meaningless a result as you can get given their history over the last 5 years. So we'll see where it goes from here.
They've done the playoffs in Buffalo. They've done it in Kansas City. Doesn't matter where it is. So it'll yes, like the Bills will likely have a higher seed if they do meet in the playoffs, and maybe it'll matter. But I'm not sure because I still think that the Chiefs win that division. I still think that they're going to be a division winner.
All right, boom. I remember earlier this season, certain USA Today Sports NFL vodcast was saying, you know what? Maybe we're not too high on the Packers. Maybe we're crowning Packers NFC contenders a little bit too soon. And yesterday, you were reminded of why. I was reminded of why I wasn't too high on the Packers. You know, it's a combination of Jordan Love just looking inconsistent at times. I mean, backpedaling 15 yards, looking like a rookie sometimes. But you also see the wow throws, right? There's just something not quite right. And on top of that, the Panthers, your Panthers, as you like to call them, I mean, sneaky, feisty team. So let's take a little forward pass here. They lost Tucker Kraft. Again, there's been inconsistencies all season long. What's your takeaway from the Panthers Packers game yesterday?
Well, first of all, like I feel like this has kind of been the theme of my takes today is like the trenches matter. Like you got to show up in the trenches. Yes, the Panthers' offensive line is not well regarded necessarily. I think they're actually a little bit underrated when healthy, but they're not right now. Guess what? They still came in. They're able to run the ball. Rico Dowdle, 2 touchdowns again. I think 130 yards. Like the Packers' run defense completely absent. And as you mentioned, the offense looks terrible. They can't get anything going on the ground with Josh Jacobs. I know that his touchdown numbers are okay, but his yards per carry are way down, and it's just not an efficient operation there either. Jordan Love, I don't get it. Like he looks unbelievable in prime time against the Steelers, and then the Panthers have him in hell, and he's like you mentioned, running around trying to throw interceptions in the end zone that are not picked off properly. That was I could have caught that. I
Yeah,
forget
how did Mike
that
Jackson
safety's
drop?
name.
He hit triangle as he was trying to catch that ball. It was very strange. Very strange.
Yes, exactly. So I said it at the top. The like Packers are just going to play to their opponent all year long, and I think that's like kind of an indictment on Matt LaFleur, honestly, to not have his team prepared to play at their best every single week. So I get why some Packers fans are definitely feeling very frustrated on this Monday morning, but I'm not going to go hit the panic button yet with them. I still see them as a contender in the NFC.
And we're going to get a real litmus test in week 10, boom, because the Packers take on the Eagles, right? And the Eagles, which have been, they've, again, we've detailed their struggles at the start of the season with, you've written about Saquon and how they need to run him more, and Jalen Hurts just hadn't looked himself. But it looked like before their bye week, the AJ Brown connection was starting to get going a little bit and figuring out a little bit more. What do you think the prognosis is for the Packers heading into week 10 against the Eagles?
Yeah, I think the Eagles coming off a bye are definitely in a good spot with just getting healthy and things like that. Getting that offense back on the same page, whether it's AJ Brown, the disgruntled AJ Brown, and Devontae Smith in the passing game to kind of complement what they were able to do on the ground leading into the bye against the Giants. Saquon finally going off. Like, is that a Giants problem or is that an Eagles kind of like getting on the right path situation? I think we're going to find out on Sunday Night Football because, as we just saw, like the Packers can clearly be exposed there when it comes to controlling that ground game. So, yeah, I haven't done too much research into the matchup yet, but when I'm making my picks this week, I wouldn't be shocked if I'm going Eagles over Packers, and I don't think that's shocking to begin with anyway.
No, I don't think that's shocking, Boom. I just can't. I understand the Eagles had all sorts of problems at the beginning of the season, but the roster's still too good. The
They
trade
still
deadline,
win.
they still win. Like, I think Kyle Brand, Good Morning Football, said it best. Like, I don't care how it looks. Like, you have time to figure out how it looks and how to get better, right? Like, that doesn't matter. Like what matters is putting wins on the left side. Like that's it. That's the only thing that matters. And the Eagles have won ugly this year. They've been winning games ugly, and when they that should be scary. That frankly should be scary for the rest of the NFC, because when you have a team that's as talented as this with the players that they have, coming off a Super Bowl victory where they dominated in that Super Bowl, that should be scary, simply put. So we'll say what Week 10 holds for the Eagles and the Packers moving forward. All right, boom. We love our superlatives around here, and as Week 9 starts to wrap up, and we look ahead to Week 10, we already did some midseason awards, but let's spin it on the not so positive side, right? Because there's plenty of good football, there's plenty of things for people to be happy about, but there's plenty of things that people should be not so happy about. So we got some superlatives here we can give to the viewers out here. So let's start here, boom. Most disappointing rookies so far in 2025.
Yeah, been an interesting rookie class to evaluate. I'm gonna go with a wide receiver, and continuing to talk about the Packers here. Matthew Golden, number 23 overall pick, and that's how many catches he has halfway through the season, 23. Uh, no touchdowns. You could The thinking was like, oh look, the Packers they don't need a number one wideout, but then they go take one in the first round, and everybody's like, okay, maybe this guy does become Jordan Love's top target. And it's just been kind of more of the same in the passing attack in regards to the target share there. So I'll go Golden as my most disappointing rookie thus far.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, boom. And it's to your point, it's like, well, I don't feel like the Packers really have a number one. Like they have a bunch of number twos. Like they're all really good, but they're not like that guy who's the game breaking guy. And Golden was kind of expected to be that guy or slot in. Hasn't happened yet. So, this might be unfair, boom. But my most disappointing rookie is Travis Hunter. I know he's hurt potentially out for the season right now, but all of the hype, the winning the Heisman Trophy, getting drafted that high, the Jaguars giving up pieces of their future draft capital to go and get this guy, and then you have the general manager give the rah-rah speech trying to tell people this is what's possible in football. Like he reminds us of like this is where football can be, and like then
Travis
you see
Hunter's
his
a person.
right, yeah, and like then you see like his numbers this year, and it's been kind of okay, right? And then he gets hurt, and it's tough, but I think a lot of us, we're really pulling for Travis Hunter to be that guy to show, there isn't a ceiling on what you can be as an NFL player. And again, it's a rookie. He's acclimating to two positions, in an off with Trevor Lawrence, and trying to figure out like what his role is going to be, and if he's, how low he is on the depth chart and all of these things. So it just hasn't been there. It hasn't been there for him. And, we hope he gets well soon. He comes back stronger in year two, but to say he's been a disappointment, I think might be even a little bit of an understatement. All right, boom. Let's move on to worst coach of the year so far in 2025. There's a few guys to pick from, but who's got
Oh
your
yeah.
vote?
Yes, lots of fun options here, but I'm gonna go with Brian Callahan, the guy who's no longer a coach, and hence why he probably did the worst job. Look, I think the power dynamics in Tennessee, whether it's the owner, the GM, the director of player personnel, they got a lot going on there, and this dates back to the late 2010s with when Mike Vrabel was the head coach there. I think the way Callahan though, like went about his when you're the head coach, you have to be the PR messenger. You're the top PR guy. You're the brand ambassador of your organization, and he was a total failure in that regard. He clearly did not have an interest in developing Cam Ward in the way that Cam Ward needs to be developed. And his roster was bad, and he just never got the guys up to play for him. So there's a reason why they moved on from him so quickly. And that's why Brian Callahan, worst coaching job of the year by far.
Right, worst ex-coach of the year by default, right? But moving forward, there's a few, like I said, I know I've picked on Brian Dable a little bit on this podcast, but I'm going to go a different direction, but I'm going to go with Mike McDaniel. And I think the biggest reason for me is you can't look at Mike McDaniel and give him all of the credit like he got when Tua kind of figured it out his first year, his first 2 years there, right? And then when Tua starts throwing interceptions left and right, and he just doesn't look like a franchise quarterback anymore, suddenly you're giving Mike McDaniel a pass for that too, right? Like it can't be both. You can't have it both ways. And On top of that, I mean, how many times do we say it's a cliche? The team takes on the personality of its head coach, right? And as much as like you and I have talked about this, like I love Mike McDaniel because he's not your cookie cutter stereotypical NFL head coach, right? He's a nerd in like a group of macho men, right? This machismo that he, lacks or doesn't present, right? But I just don't think he's been the guy this year. And like his team has shown that in recent years. And this year it's really manifested itself in a different way. Now, Chris Greer loses his job, whether that's mutual or not, who knows? Their banners are flying overhead at Hard Rock Stadium still. The offense just doesn't look right. I know Tyreek's not there, but you still have Jalen Waddle. You still have pieces there to try and make something work. So, yeah, I think Mike McDaniel gets my vote for worst coach of the year so far in 2025.
Yeah, talent and culture kind of combine in this way. That's almost like an eclipse sometimes. And for the Mike McDaniel Miami Dolphins, it was really that 2023 season where they had such a strong start, and then so many injuries on the defensive side of the ball in the back half of that year just kind of doomed them. They gave the division away to the Buffalo Bills and then had to go play that freezing cold playoff game in Kansas City, and then that was a wrap. So it
Mhm.
speaks to how fickle these moments are when you're building a contender or trying to in the NFL.
All right, boom. We have plenty of players in the running for most valuable player this year. Josh Allen again, Jonathan Taylor sounds, but who's the least valuable player in your estimation?
Look, he set the bar pretty high for himself last year with a 2,000 rushing yard season, but I'm going to say Saquon Barkley. He's really only had one big game this year, and he's been pretty inefficient in terms of his yards per carry. So, yeah, I'm going Saquon. Almost an MVP last year, and then kind of a zero until recently, but that was just one game again.
Yeah, I think that's again the expectations for Saquon. You have a 2,000-yard season to your point, one of the few in NFL history. Like, I don't think anybody was expecting 2,000 yards again. It's unrealistic, but you're expecting him to be an impact guy, right? And it just hasn't happened. So I don't think that's unfair at all. Geno Smith, my friend, Geno Smith. Listen, they trade for you, they give you the contract. You're reunited with Pete Carroll. You're expected to be the guy, but then all you actually deliver instead of quality play is interceptions, right? And a lot of times, especially in the NFL, like so many of your hopes are all tied and to your quarterback and what the quarterback is going to give you. And Gino just hasn't been that guy this year, unfortunately. And I know Pete Carroll wants to run the ball and he wants to develop an identity there, but you can't develop an identity when you're turning the ball over, man. So, Geno Smith, I'm sorry. To this point, you are the USA Today Sports NFL podcast, at least co-owner, least valuable player.
No, I stamp it. I stamp it.
All right, boom. And the worst offseason move, this one's pretty obvious, right? Like at least it hasn't gotten much better as the weeks have progressed. But what's the worst offseason move to this point?
I mean, it's got to be the Dallas Cowboys trading Micah Parsons to the Green Bay Packers. Wow, Packers have really been a through line of our episode today. This has been great. But yeah, I mean, look, the Cowboys defense can't stop the run, which was Jerry Jones's insane reasoning for trading Parsons. So I mean, clearly that didn't work. And now they can't stop anything. They can't get after the quarterback. They're apparently looking for a pass rusher ahead of the trade deadline, but I think that getting rid of Parsons is just an organizational malpractice, and I still believe that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think there's really much of a debate, but if there could be a debate, I think sometimes the worst moves you make are the ones that you don't actually make, right? And I'm looking at the New York Giants this year, and at this point, I mean, they're well out of it, losing games left and right, finding creative ways to lose. And this is just an extension of Brian Dable, right? 2-7 this season again. This is the third straight season they started 2-7. It's ugly. It's not pretty. And I said at the beginning when we started this podcast, boom, it's like the best thing for the Giants organization moving forward is if Jackson Dart looks like a franchise quarterback, which, it's limited sample size, but he's looked pretty good, right? The best thing for Brian Dable was to win games, and he hasn't won games. And even with Jackson Dart looking semi decent, I mean, you're going to miss the playoffs again. The defense looks horrid, and however much blame people want to heap on Brian Daboll or Shane Bowen, the defensive coordinator there, ultimately the head coach is in charge of the program, right? The head coach is in charge of what's going on. So you can't just be a head coach of one player, or you can't just be a head coach of the offense. You got to be the head coach of the whole team. So Brian Daboll owns a lot of the mess that's happening in New York. Even if Jackson Dart is, again, for Giants fans, light at the end of the tunnel, the positive at the end of all of this, playoffs feel nice too. And Brian Daboll clearly hasn't delivered on that to this point.
Fire everybody.